Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be doing a video on basic combat mechanics that exist in the game. I noticed that a lot, especially newer players, have a hard time understanding just basic mechanics, things like damage reduction. I know a lot of people ask about block and pierce specifically. I'll also be going over dodge and hit rate, and it's a shame because there's not many resources to help players easily understand what these mechanics do. So, unless you have tested them extensively, it's kind of hard to understand, especially if you're just getting into the game and you didn't play since the beginning to before they actually added most of these in. It can be confusing as to why they even exist in the first place. So, I plan to go over 3 sections. I might separate them into 3 videos depending on how long it gets, but the 3 sections would be the most basic mechanics, which are dot or damage, DMG, and damage reduction. Sometimes people get confused what damage RED is. This just is an abbreviation for damage reduction. So I'll be going over those two as a pair because they kind of cooperate, or they're, counteractive to one another in a way. Next, I'll be going over dodge and hit rate, and lastly, pierce and block. And I'll be going in order of the most basic to the most advanced ones because I think it's in order to understand pierce and block, you first have to understand damage and damage reduction. So I'll be going over this pair right here first because this is the most basic. If you're, an old player or you've been playing long, you're a strong player that's been playing a while, you have a good grasp of the game, you probably don't need to watch this first video. But if you need help with dodge or hit rate or pierce or block, feel free to watch those videos. Those will also be on my channel. But anyways, let's get into it. So, like I said, this is the most basic combat mechanic in the game. There's nothing fancy or hidden about it. It's really just as what it says. The only confusing thing is how they stack with additional sources that add additional amounts of that bonus. So what I mean is, this is going to sound confusing, but bear with me. Damage is, when it stacks additively. And what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, I have this source of damage right here, which is 50%. Let's say I have another source right here, damage 45%. To find my total damage on this hero, I simply add them together. So 50 plus 45, I have 95%. Now, obviously, there's a million sources of damage, so by the time you add it all up, I might be reaching, 400, 500%. Now, you might be thinking, hey, isn't that just super obvious? Why did you even say that? And the reason is because damage reduction does not work the same way. If I have 50% right here, and then I have another 58% right here, that does not mean I have 108%. That's because damage reduction does not stack additively like damage. It has diminishing returns. And the reason for that is because if it did stack like the way I just suggested, so 50 plus 58, that means I would have 108 damage reduction, which means my hero would be invincible. So there's a different process that goes into play when you figure out your hero's total damage reduction, which I'll explain right now. So if I have, where was it? If I have 50% right here, and then I have another 58% right here. Sorry, did I say 50 or 58 back here? So I don't remember. But the point is to calculate the hero's damage reduction, it takes the highest initial value, and then it adds the second value as a percent of the first, not as a flat number. So what I mean by that is, let's say I have Here's a perfect example actually. Let's say I have 50% here, and then I have 8% here. To find my total, I do not add them, so I do not add 8 plus 50, which would be 58. I add 8% of 50, which I'm not good at math, sorry. But the reason for that is essentially if I were to add all my sources of damage reduction, so let's say I add this 55, the 50, 58, etc., etc. In essence, the point of this is that it gets closer and closer to 99.99999%. And that's again so heroes don't become invincible. Now that might sound really amazing on paper, 99.99%, but obviously, as most players know, there's ways around that. There's ways to reduce enemy damage reduction. There's things like direct damage, and so on. Now, just to wrap up, I guess I should explain what they even are, if you're a brand new player. And damage is a multiplier of your hero's max attack. So I have 147,000. My damage, let's say in theory, I have 100% bonus damage from whether it be here, my equipment. Obviously, I don't have exactly 100, but let's say in theory. That basically adds, or that doubles my damage. It multiplies my attack, or not multiplies. It adds my base attack, which is 147,000, and then it adds 100% attack on top of that. So now I basically have double damage. Now damage works for all sources of damage, so my skill, my divine, my base attack, any source of damage is affected. It's a global multiplier for all sources. I'm not going to get into specifics like attack damage and skill damage here, that's for a separate video, but just to get down the basics, that's how damage works. As for damage reduction, it is what it says it is. It reduces incoming damage. So if Shooting Star theoretically took 10,000 damage and she has 50% damage reduction, she now would take 5,000, assuming the enemy did not have any way of piercing or mitigating that damage reduction. So again, that's a very basic mechanic. Not many people were confused with it to begin with, but this video kind of lays out the foundation for my future videos, which will be on dodge, pierce, block, all of that stuff. So I just wanted to lay, the foreground down as I get into more in-depth videos in the future, which will also be on my channel. So many of you didn't need this explanation, I'm sure, but just to get it out there for the beginners, the people who are still curious, still starting off in this game. I hope it made sense. Feel free to ask any questions, and thanks for watching.